And you get to a point where you can only optimize that to a certain level. You've reached an optimal level with that. There's only so much you can target people. And the only other way that you can make that better is to make the people more predictable. And he said there's a chance that these algorithms are targeting things like, Make America Great Again, or stuff that will put people into very obvious response categories at people to make them more predictable for ads.
The Earth Locker, chatting our way to being better Earthlings.
Yeah, but now you sound like a Tesco commercial.
Oh. Welcome to the Earth Locker with Tom,
Rob, and Byron,
where we unlock Earth's best kept secrets and make you feel a little bit better on a daily basis.
Well, then I'll clap it in one more time. Rob will clap it in. They'll all clap. Well, just clap, clap, clap.
Everybody clap.
Everybody clap.
You ready, Chris? Uh-huh. Do a clap. Look at the filth of them feet.
Those are feet.
Oh, you can see.
That's called hippie foot.
Yeah.
That's a bohemian right there.
That's filth that you can't get out even with a loofah.
It's that's
You want to pummel, what do they call them? Pummel stones?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want a pummel stone.
They're ferocious, aren't they?
Or a belt sander
they'll
or
take
two.
they'll take the first few layers off. You can get these brushes now. I found one down at my dad's, and I was like, "What the hell is that?"
Steel
It looked
wool.
like some kind of like torture instrument because there was one bit that's got like a metal grate on it,
On
and
the
like
brush.
it's like a cheese grater. I'm like, what are you taking off with that?
Yeah, what's that for?
Yeah, I don't know. Put some hard ass skin.
Yeah, I got one of those. It is like it's a cheese grater.
What,
Yeah,
for
it's
your
a microwave.
skin?
Yeah, it's like
For
off the
an
little
oven
hard
or
bits.
something.
If you put someone on a table, you'd be like planing them.
Who's building up that much dead skin that they
Mate, I
got
can take
like
off my shoe and show
elephant
you
feet?
Yeah, I can show you.
Go on then.
That's good.
Hey, come on then.
I want to see. This is
Oh
an
god, I'm right next to
exclusive.
him. I mean, it's...
This is an exclusive.
I'll
Kids.
have you know these are clean socks.
I've
Brand
seen
Oh god.
Byron
Look at
Knight's
that,
dead
look at that.
skin.
Big thing there.
Is that
yeah.
a bunion?
Thing, and then
That's a bunion.
That's like I got a little pedicure a month ago, and it really hurts if I don't get them taken off when I'm working on my feet all the time at the bar.
Really?
The only time I had those on my feet was when I did.
You've got old lady feet.
I do have old lady
Lady
feet.
feet.
You kids,
I can't
don't
do
mess
it with my bunion.
Maybe we should have an episode where we file down the dead skin lumps on your feet.
Or we get someone else to do it for us.
And
Or
film it.
we find random people in need of pedicures and just randomly do pedicures in the street.
What about like Noel Clark and Ashley Walters? Noel Clark, former guest of the Earth Locker. Him and Ashley Walters, after a day of filming, will go and get mani pedis.
Yeah,
Isn't that lovely?
in Cape Town. They were. That's where it was. Yeah,
photo
because
of
also they're really reasonably priced in Cape Town.
Right, right.
It's pretty reasonably priced here.
Is it? I have no idea.
20, 30
Byron.
quid.
Please tell me.
20, 30 quid. That's it.
20, 30 quid.
Yeah.
Mate, you're talking like a $5 over there.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah.
That's like some
it's
highly
it's
exploited
relative.
labor, in my opinion.
If you're on international wages and you go to Cape Town, then you can get
Yeah.
a pretty good pedicure.
I went to Cambodia once, and it was an internet cafe where you put your feet in fish tanks beneath the computers.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
And these fish eat all of the dead skin off your feet. But they'll also eat scabs and cuts and things, so you have to cover any cuts with plasters.
Would it like open up? Would it?
Yeah.
Ooh.
And the lady next to me, this French lady,
Sent it to him.
the fish opened up her foot, and I looked down. I was in the middle of an email. I looked down, and there was a big, massive pool of blood in the tank.
It's like a mini scene from Jaws. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jaws, the Guppy edition.
Jaws, the internet cafe.
Return of the Guppies.
All right, so we're good to go, yeah?
Sir
Good.
Francis Boyle. Sir Francis Boyle, the King of Scotland.
Oh.
He's our guest today. He's the king. He's the legitimate King of Scotland.
Or just Glasgow.
Because Glasgow. He's the King of Glasgow. Because his great Irish chieftain parents came over somewhere,
invaded Glasgow.
and then gave birth to the king.
Yeah, I read that on Wikipedia. It's pretty compelling story about Frankie Boyle.
Yeah. He also, he slaughtered many, many thousands of Glaswegians before taking his rightful position on the throne.
King Boyle.
King Boyle.
King Boyle.
Aye. That sounds like something you get at a lobster restaurant.
Or on your foot.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm afraid it's a King Boyle.
Yeah. Or what about, speaking of South Africa, the king clip?
Oh, king
Did you
clip.
have that fish,
It's a lovely
which
fish.
is probably one of the nicest fish I've ever eaten. In
And you
all
can
my
get
life.
you can get a whole baby king clip, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it's actually quite a healthy fish as well. 'Cause it's such a very young fish, so it's not got like all the metals and stuff in it. But it is a delicious fish. When you get the baby king clip, it comes on the bone.
Yeah,
So
I've had
it's
this.
so tender. It's
I've had
amazing.
this.
It's an incredible fish.
Yeah, that was one of the things I missed most about South Africa, was the seafood.
Oh, the food is immense there. So good.
But you don't get seafood in Glasgow. You get battered Mars bars, deep fried. No, you get a bit of haddock.
And you
deep
get
fried.
Greg's Bakery.
But I'd be interested to talk to Sir Francis Boyle about. He's such a giant brain, isn't he? He's such a
He is a giant brain. He's
giant
got
brain.
an amazing career as a comedian, doing all those panel comedy things on TV.
Yeah.
That's how I know him from.
and a writer. You know, he writes for the Guardian and he writes books, and he's a prolific man.
What are his books about?
They're sort of about whatever. They're sort of thinkings. Do you know what I mean? They're little think boxes, but they're funny. You know, because I think his function machine, his creative function machine, basically is highly curious, highly absorbent, and then goes and turns everything into jokes. And just so happens that his favorite type of joke is the vulgar. It's like the meanest, most like controversial.
I want to ask
You
him
know,
that. I want to know if like when he does that, is it on purpose that? Because sometimes it's like, is he trying to find the most kind of like offensive way? Not offensive, but do you know what I mean? Like a kind of a
be an agent provocateur.
yeah. Which
think
I love that kind of comedy because it's disrupting the status quo. And I like all that.
I think I've heard him on his specials talking about comedy in terms of discovery. Do you know what I mean? Like offensive and controversial comedy is just stuff that it's just territory that people are unwilling to drift into and unwilling to admit it's really, really funny. But then, you know, the guy's a sellout, like like a sellout gigs, not a sellout, but like concerts all across the UK. So like people find it extraordinarily funny because there's an element of pioneering to it.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? There's an element of going to a place that he finds instinctually the most funny that a lot of other comedians, if they had the wherewithal, wouldn't dare.
Yeah, because
Do you know
Jimmy
what I mean?
Carr used to do a bit of that as well.
Yeah.
And it's very British kind of comedy, I think, the
Yeah.
way he does, you know, because in America, I think a lot of the comedians, they do push the boundaries, but it feels like I feel like they always have an audience on side. They're not always necessarily doing the most controversial thing. Whereas I think British comedy, a lot of the comedians here tend to push that. Like Jimmy Carr did the same thing. Frankie Boyle massively did it. And then even like now like James, what's his name? James Whitehall, what was his name? Is it?
James...
Is it James Whitehall?
Jack Whitehall?
Jack Whitehall, sorry, yeah,
Yeah,
Jack.
but he's not pushing any boats out, man.
Do you know what I think?
He just, he does comedy about M&S coupons.
Jack, if you're watching, you got to step up from M&S.
Yeah, well, let's start a feud, man. But you know what? It's funny because in Ireland, if the king, or this is pre-Christian Ireland, or if the king, because there was many nations, let's say, in Ireland, and they'd all be warring and sort of, the borders would be changing. And if a king or a chieftain or whatever was becoming too power hungry, too despotic, too mad, the poet acted kind of like an investigative journalist in one way, and his job was to dress down the king, take him down a few pegs by essentially gathering all of his best poets together in the kingdom. They would meet on a hill at dawn, right, all in their cloaks, and they would compose a poem to essentially comedically dress down, or to some degree humiliate or roast the king, and and thereby kind of undermine his power and kind of bring back a level of humility to the king who'd been
And the king
marauding
welcomed this. Like the king was like
that. It literally went king, cleric, poet. That's how important the function in their society was. So comedy roasts has always been, not always been, but certainly throughout since time immemorial, been a thing that's been consistent with human nature. It's been a way to kind of de-intensify the potency of power.
It's really kind of a European thing as well, because I can't remember any equivalent, to the best of my knowledge, in like Asian culture and Imperial Japan.
Yeah, it's
like
probably
that.
not so
It
much
feels
a thing over
very
there.
much like it's a European English sort of.
Well, the
tradition.
Americans have definitely taken it on as well now, haven't they? The
we're
roast thing.
We're just fucking colonies, aren't we?
Well, yeah, that's true.
We're European colonies.
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
Yeah.
The Americans are kind of almost sort of fragments, funhouse mirror distorted of all the different cultures that have contributed to America.
Everything great about Europe on steroids, deep fried in a fun bear.
Yeah, and also about Haiti, about Cuba, about South America, about Japan, about Canada. I was going to say, you know, I couldn't really think of much. The Canadians, no offense, Canadians, but you know,
We love you. We love you, Canada.
yeah,
I'd live in Canada. I would.
My wife really fancies the Canadian president, Prime Minister.
Yeah,
Yep.
Justin Trudeau.
But I'm not sure. I said, are you sure it's not just because he's the best of a bad bunch? Because he is a good-looking dude.
He is. He
but
looks
is
like
he just
Elvis.
really good-looking in comparison to every other world leader?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that absolutely. Like JFK famously got elected on the debate between him and Nixon, and everybody who watched the debate on television voted for JFK, and everybody who listened to it on the radio voted for Nixon.
Yeah. That was a
Interesting.
famous debate when Nixon forgot to shave and had a real heavy 5 o'clock shadow.
And was a rampant drinker.
Yes.
He was a real heavy drinker, was Nixon. Apparently, in some drunk-fueled rages, he ordered the nuclear bombing of Vietnam. And
What?
yeah, and his generals or the people around him were like, okay, we will get on it 100%, sir. And they're like, you know what, let's just wait till the morning.
Give him a minute.
Sobered up a little.
Let him sleep on
Literally,
it.
in a drunken rage, he requested the button be pressed. Now, I don't know if that's true.
Let's get Henry
happened.
Kissinger on. He
Someone
would know.
told me that once. Yeah, Henry Kissinger. I was only reading up about watching stuff on him recently.
Smart man.
Smart man was kind of credited for being the chief political strategist during the Nixon era and the Ford era, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So a lot of people consider Henry Kissinger as a war criminal.
Oh, yeah. I
Do
can
they?
see that.
Yeah,
Sure.
a war
Jeez.
criminal. Because Nixon increased the American presence and the American war effort in Vietnam, when at the time it seemed completely kind of futile and hopeless to kind of get any kind of peaceful resolution out of it. And he just doubled down. He was like, right, fuck it. Lyndon B. Johnson started this shit. I'm gonna double it down. Sorry, JFK started this shit. He got assassinated. Lyndon B. intensified it. And then Nixon came in and he was like, we are going to intensify it all the more. So,
All these good impersonations of political figures, I think, is lost in a generation.
yeah, and the thing is,
Oh, yeah.
you can't do an impersonation of Justin Trudeau because he's Canadian. He doesn't have any features or characteristics.
He doesn't.
Wow.
Occasionally
I'm
say,
only messing.
you can figure it out. You know?
Yeah, I think
You
our
can go down to Toronto.
our Canadian boss castmates are going to
All of them are like,
be really angry at us.
kill them.
Yeah.
Kill them when they come.
How dare
Detain
they?
them on their way into the country.
How dare those guys, eh? I mean, that's not fair.
Yeah. I've got to quarantine there soon. I've got to go down in there. They stick me in a hotel room before I start shooting this movie in like a few
Really?
weeks' time. Yeah.
Where are you quarantining?
I don't know. I'm trying to negotiate into an Airbnb because
Yeah.
I've heard that I've heard like horror stories so far that people have literally been put in designated hotel floors where it's for all the quarantining people, and
Same as
you're not
like-
allowed to leave your room.
It's like a cruise ship off the coast of Italy.
Yeah. But I was like, this is like it's like a glamorous prison. Like if you,
Yeah.
you stay in Shangri-La or whatever, but then you're in a room with no
You having
outside space.
Meals delivered to your door, like, like Steve
Exactly.
McQueen in
They've installed
Papillon.
all those little those little doors.
I could see you poking the head out after a week, just be like,
You gotta let me out, man. I can't handle another week.
how am I looking? Do I look healthy? Yeah, you look fine.
I feel vitamin D deficient.
It's organic, right? Yeah, everything we give you is organic. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, it's organic. It's grass fed.
But
But yeah, so you got to stick in a room. But I've heard these. I was talking to my agent, and she's got people on a movie in Dublin that are in a hotel room and haven't been allowed to leave the room because the hotel is able to see, obviously in the key cards, whether they're leaving the room or not. And these are people that haven't got COVID. These are people that have obviously just moved to Dublin, but they've been tested as well. So you've been tested, it's negative, but you still got to quarantine for 2 weeks. It's intense.
There's wildly varying protocols going on with filming. There's another film going on in Belfast where the kind of COVID protocols aren't that strict. My agent's working on it via one of our clients.
See, is it governmental or is it productions that are, I think
it's productions, because certainly I don't think the government have sort of handed down from above on high protocols, but I think the difference is the unions, like Screen Actors Guild,
have different ones to equity or whatever.
Yeah, but shooting in Europe, they don't have as much jurisdiction. And over here, the unions are a little bit on their arse, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, if it's a SAG ruling, man, that'll have to stand.
That's mad. So what are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna just demand to be in an Airbnb, and then at least then you have some.
Well, I have said exactly. At least I can order in, because I guess you can have like food delivery things, right? And you can just get your food and you can cook your own food if you're in an Airbnb. Because that's my biggest thing is like to just get food deliveries from restaurants for 2 weeks solid.
It hurts your sense of agency, doesn't it? There's a thing in Ireland called direct provision, which is essentially a holding area for immigrants who haven't been approved to come into the country, right? Who refuse to go back to whatever very unstable situation they came from. So in order to tick as necessary boxes as possible, the Irish government has put them into what used to be Butlins, right? Which is all chalets, right? Which have no way of cooking
For
your
people
own
who
food.
don't know what Butlins is, it's like an old style holiday camp.
Yeah, where you we used to do the community games, the Irish community games, all that stuff got held there because there was racing tracks and football pitches and stuff. But it's like, it's essentially what you're dreading going into. Some people in Ireland, some African and Asian people in that, have been in that situation now for years.
And they're just living in a Butlins.
They're living in a Butlins.
Well, the entertainment nights are great.
But what's happening as well is that there's these companies essentially that provide the food because they can't cook for themselves. They have no agency. They're not allowed to go out and get any food.
I don't imagine it's great quality
it's
food.
Crap, beige sausages and chips and crap. And now those companies have a vested interest in keeping that situation the way it is.
Oh my God.
Do you know what I'm saying? Direct provision. Let's look into it. Let's inquire about it. Let's get it stopped in Ireland because it's fucked.
Is it just in Ireland that's happening?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's called direct provision in Ireland. There's probably other versions of it. I'm not too sure.
I'm really intrigued to know.
Is it better than like the immigrant camps that are on the French border to here?
I don't know, but it's just.
I would hope so.
I'd hope so. Yeah, I mean, there's shelter and heating, but it's the same as there's also, because of the housing crisis in Ireland. Not to get all too heavy on you, but like, there's one law in Ireland that if you have children, you're a mother, they have to house you. But because there weren't enough homes, basically they were putting all these single mothers and stuff into hotel rooms all around Dublin mostly and paying full whack. But these people have been in there again for years in a hotel room. Do you know what I mean? No cooker, no way to wash your own clothes in a sink, I suppose. But you're living kind of in a box, and for a long, long period of time. It was supposed to be a kind of an emergency holding solution that has now just become a mainstay. And it's fucked. It's really fucked. But they've just ousted the housing minister in Ireland, so it's a good thing. So I think they just build some houses for people. I mean, I know, like, suddenly if we can pay the wages of an entire country for 4, 5, 6 months, you couldn't build houses for 3,000 people? Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Horse shit, Irish government. Horse shit. Anyway, that's my political rant over with for the day. Or is it? But we're going to talk to Sir Francis Boyle about simulation theory. He's big into talking about simulation theory, which in a nutshell is that reality is virtual and we are all living in a simulation that could have perhaps been started by future versions of ourselves that have computers powerful enough to maintain belief states in all our little pixel-brained heads.
So it's a similar sort of thing to the Matrix, I suppose, is what.
It's
Like,
kind
in
of,
a-
it's
in a
so
weird way.
perverse,
Sounds
isn't
like
it?
that 3D porn thing that I saw once with the goggles.
Go on.
Very well, just that.
Yeah.
Stimulation theory, right?
Stimulation theory.
Stimulation theory. There you go.
Same thing,
There's
the
a new one.
predecessor.
Very different.
Coined that term.
Stimulation theory.
Stimulation theory. I love that.
So, but that's the interesting thing about virtual reality,
About VR,
because
yeah.
it casts doubt on our rendering of our reality.
Yeah.
That we're living in a kind of a quantum universe full of waves and ripples and never-ending subatomic particles that come in and out of existence, called quarks, and qubits in the
Character
computational.
off Deep Space Nine Star Trek.
Jesus Christ.
Do you know what I mean?
Quite sci-fi.
And our consciousness and gravity and things essentially interact with these waves and particles that exist only as a probability until they're interacted with by our consciousness or gravity or, I don't know, a few other things, dark matter, energy, all that type of stuff, which then shape through our five senses what the world is.
Solid.
And I was reading Deepak Chopra's book, Meta-Human, and it talks about, it's quite disturbing, the idea to think that your body isn't solid.
So,
Shut up, helicopter! But he talks about, like, consider two magnets that are polarically the same. And when you try and push them together, right, they are essentially like my thumb and my kneecap,
Yeah.
experiencing the same thing in a quantum magnetic field or in a magnetic field, whatever. Essentially, he's talking about shifting consciousness so that we see our reality differently. So at the basis of it is... But it's interesting thing that really nothing is solid at the subatomic level.
Yeah.
Physicists and scientists all agree on this. And so simulation theory seems to have emerged out of an idea that all of this is software that's been written.
Well, so if you look at, so you're thinking, I know for a fact all three of us aren't heavily into our screens. Like, but like my missus, she does social media stuff, so she's always looking at her phone.
What's her handle?
Her handle, Man's Millie. That's Man's Millie.
Man's Millie.
Man's Millie. So she's always on her phone, and I'm never on my phone, and neither are three of us. And I do wonder, like you're saying, simulation theory, is that maybe we could be manipulated as population as we more and more get addicted to this virtual life via phones, via augmented reality, via virtual reality games.
Yeah.
And could they be molding what's going to happen in our future because computer programmers have set up a major conspiracy to mold how the world's going to be?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
it's. I think
us designing it forward, backwards.
Conspiracy is a pretty heavy word, but that is what's happening. Technology is shaping how we see the world. But there's this Swedish philosopher and physicist who's come up with simulation theory, and basically at the quantum level, they've been able to look at photons, which are particles of light, which again are strange things because they're essentially just little triggers. They're just little triggers that exist out there that we, in a black vacuum in our visual cortex, turn into what we see as light. So the flash bulb of a camera or the flicker of a faraway candle is essentially happening in a black vacuum inside your brain, right? And at the subatomic photon level, they've noticed anomalies in the light in the same way that we have noticed in simulations that we've created in powerful computers. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they've seen
It's working in the same way, yeah.
yeah, they've seen sort of odd similarities between the real world and between... Oh! Frankie Boyle!
Can't hear us.
Frankie Boyle, who's completely kind of cast in shadow. Or
Can you hear us, Frankie?
or Sir Francis Boyle, as we've been referring to you as.
I had it beautifully set up, and then my neighbour started mowing his lawn. But if it's too dark in there, I think he might have gone now. He might be about to go.
We like a bit of
Just
background noise.
put the computer towards him and we'll threaten him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All the way from London. Threats.
That's
Table.
well, this table is very much the fourth host of the Earth Locker.
Yeah.
And
Beating heart.
It took 25 hours of Byron Knight's time to knock together here in my balcony. And originally, Frankie, it was supposed to have pallets up the front, which we were going to plant plants in. But then I planted some sort of half lazily and haphazardly, and they all died. And plus, the table was highly
Which was a
impractical.
bad metaphor for the Earth Locker. Bringing dead plants.
Yeah. Just sort of skeletal lavender. Just like, help me. But
Where are you guys?
We're in my flat. We're in my apartment.
Yeah.
And
So-
when we started recording this, it was just kind of as the lockdown was coming to an end, but anxieties were still high, and some of my neighbours did threaten me with the old Residents Association email that they would call the police if we kept gathering and making podcasts. But alas, everyone's still alive, thank God.
Yeah.
Knock wood. How are you? Are you in the land of Glasgow that you conquered?
Yeah, man. I've been here for the whole thing. I got COVID right at the start.
Oh, nice.
Oh, you got it.
Nice, well, congratulations.
Well done.
I was doing some gigs in Soho, and like everybody had that cough, and then I got it, and I thought this is going to really take off because everybody's got it. And I was okay. I mean, I had 2 bad days, and then I was all right. And then I came up to Glasgow and I've just taken up yoga.
Oh,
nice.
and how bad was it, Frankie? Like, just because I've not spoken to many people with it and who have had it, so how
I
bad
found
was
the
it for
cough
you?
really bad. There was like the cough lasted for ages. But there was just like 2 days of like flu type symptoms.
Right.
But I found afterwards, as a lot of people have found, there's a kind of long downside to it.
Yeah.
So I don't think my lung capacity came back to normal for like months, for like 2 months.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Is this partly why you took up yoga?
Yeah, because I thought, I was already doing it like a little, but then I really stepped it up.
Did you is it a common fare in Glasgow these days, yoga? Has the
Yeah,
technology
there's a
of
lot of
yoga been embraced in Glasgow and Scotland
A
at
lot of
large?
classes and a lot of hot yoga.
Yeah, how'd you like the hot yoga? I love that stuff.
Oh yeah, no, that's too hardcore for me, man.
It's,
I like dripping. It's like, like that feeling.
yeah, but
of just
inevitably in those hot yogas, you always want it behind the guy that's a little too eager with the dolphin shorts, and the heat kind of lets everything drop, and
Yep.
they get those positions, and it just
You get the pendulum balls.
yeah, it's
Oh,
just
no.
too much. It's more than I want to see.
No, you don't wanna see that.
Definitely not.
Have you been embracing the hot yoga?
No, I've just had an instructor
Oh, yeah.
who comes on, so I can just kind of mute it and fart quietly by myself.
Oh wait, you do this virtually, like a online
Yeah.
virtual yoga thing.
But a one-to-one thing.
I find, Frankie, that I like yoga, but it negates getting into a meditative place that I find can be got into in a more profound way by just sitting still. I feel like the yoga, the movement of the yoga,
Takes you out.
I've somehow conceptually distorted it probably in my head that it is now something that's holding me back from getting to a no-think, lovely place of awareness where all the lovely juicy jellies of consciousness pop up. Do you know what I mean?
As a performer, I don't know if you find this, but you know that thing where people go, well, it's almost impossible to still your internal monologue, and it's almost impossible to switch it off, and yoga helps and meditation helps. And I just think, fuck, try doing a stand-up gig, because I'm thinking about nothing. Like I can be 70 minutes in, and then someone will start shouting, and you're like, oh, I've got to go back into the body and deal with this.
Yeah.
But like, it's not there. It's just such an autopilot.
I think that's when I harp on about meditation, and God knows anyone who knows me knows that I can bore folks to tears on repeat about meditation, because I think too many people I talk to do identify with the stream of thoughts in their mind, you know, the sort of mind-made, and they think that that's somehow the kind of inner TV screen that they're identifying with, that they're going, oh, now I'm feeling this thing, now I'm feeling this thing. That's as illusory as a TV show. And it's just, you're right. Like I through practice now can switch off the stream, you know, and it's not that hard, but people are so invested in the illusion that you can't switch that off. It's it's a shame, really. It's a shame. It keeps people on the surface.
And what do those people think when they have a cup of coffee or eat a banana? Because that changes your consciousness. I mean, you're still invested with those thoughts, but they're different thoughts because you've eaten a chocolate bar. Or
Yeah. And I think people, it to go further, like they've departmentalized eating from thoughts. You know, that's not a connection that people will naturally make anymore, because we differentiate everything. I think the ego, which is the creator of those thoughts, its job is to localize reality and differentiate everything from everything else. So the heart is different from the lungs, is different from the brain, is different from the legs, is different from the banana. And so you're right. And it's, I suppose we're coming out of that essentially a little bit nutritionally by thinking, well, no, this does affect my mood. And if I have this and it's a strange one. But you're right. Banana affects your mood. Chocolate sends you through the roof. It's all having an effect, and therefore it's kind of all one.
Yeah, man.
How flexible are you? Will you demonstrate some?
Let's see your downward dog.
In your new comedy show.
I think you're not supposed to do it when you're quite heavy, or they don't imagine you doing it when you're quite heavy. So you get really strong from doing a lot of plank and a lot or essentially push-ups in between the transition.
Yeah.
You can go from being not strong at all to really, like, I feel like a lot stronger.
Yeah, like I love doing that. The cobra move, because I had a nasty back injury a while back, and for remedial stuff, because certain moves will make it worse. Like, if you do that thing where you go back onto your heels.
Oh, the Sphinx. Oh no,
and then you come forward like that.
Yeah.
There's like a move you do like that, and I literally just did it relentlessly every single day. These like 5 simple yoga moves, but a lot of it was to be able to create that traction, to be able to push like the disc that had come out, push that back in, and just kept doing it. And before I knew it, it was like I was like pain free.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Was it like a hi-fi stereo system? It kept popping out, and you just sort of pop it back in at the start of the day.
You're gonna have to go back in, son. You are not welcome. You are not welcome.
Good Lord.
Yeah. But yeah, I think yoga's it's a very powerful thing. But there's different types, isn't there? There's so many different types of yoga now. There is ones that are more, there's less movement and more meditative.
Yeah.
Types of it.
Yin yoga is much more just
Yin.
sort of sitting there.
Yeah.
And having an hour of being in a position for maybe 5-10 minutes at a time.
Oh, wow.
That's the one I quite like, because it's almost meditation.
It's almost like napping.
Just like, now you have to move. Yeah. Has this changed your perception on simulation theory, Sir Francis?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts about simulation.
We want to hear them. We want to hear all of them.
I've started to think it's maybe quite a conservative idea, much as it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I also think if we're base reality, right? So if we're not a simulation, that might actually be worse for us.
We're just flying in the wind.
Yeah. This is us trying to go, we're just justifying the crap that's going on in the world. Yeah.
Well, maybe, but there's also the idea that we are going to create at some point simulated realities. I mean, I think everyone can see where the ideas come from, that we have photorealism in computers and all that kind of stuff. If we're going to create simulated realities, we'll be their god.
Yeah.
We'll be their base camp. Mm-hmm. And it might make sense for them to come and take over us.
Yeah.
Sure, everything's okay, because we're the hardware that keeps our universes alive.
Do you think that part of our compulsion to create a new virtual reality, be it through AI or whatever, is encoded in that compulsion is a desire to be taken over?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So a bunch of masochists is what you're saying.
That we don't trust our own autonomy in the universe, and we'd rather create something that is infinitely cleverer than us to take care of things. Like we're still all suckling on the teat of our mothers.
There's an ego in that, isn't there? That we imagine that AI or something would be interested in us, and we would actually look like the mold on a potato or something.
Yeah, we would. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I got some natural yogurt out of my fridge a few weeks back, and there was a whole satellite city of fungi going on. And it was so complex in its construction, It was like, it looked like a futuristic city. And I was thinking there's probably like little fellas I can't see down there going to work or creating more city.
What's that great big thing up there?
Yeah.
Who's that?
And then I just ran it down the sink,
Just destroyed a world.
Yeah. I destroyed the world. And I felt guilty about it for the rest of the day, So you're right. I think AI will, if it's, many, many millions of times more clever than the average person, there is a great possibility that it could just... That's what Elon Musk says, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like we don't like killing animals, but sometimes we kill them on the road as a matter of course. Just because we're getting around and stuff.
There you
Although,
go.
interestingly, Elon Musk and some stuff got leaked from Tesla about their own kind of AI programs, and they have thousands of what are called data labelers. So basically, if you don't think AI is going to be all that, you'd have a lot of data labelers for your machine learning, the people who sort of program your AI and keep it on the right track. So it suggests that Elon Musk doesn't think that AI or simulated reality is coming along terribly soon.
Oh, really?
There's lots of interesting people I've been watching talking about. One is this guy who was one of the early people in AI. He's one of the leaders in the field. And he says a big problem is that it's been used to sell us stuff. So the algorithms in Facebook and so on are basically designed to target ads. That's what they do. They're incredibly complex, but they're just trying to show you something you're more likely to buy. And you get to a point where you can only optimize that to a certain level. You've reached an optimal level with that. There's only so much you can target people. And the only other way that you can make that better is to make the people more predictable. You know, and he said there's a chance that these algorithms are targeting things like, you know, Make America Great Again, or stuff that will put people into very obvious response categories at people to make them more predictable for ads.
I saw that Netflix documentary,
The Great Hack.
And they were talking about Cambridge Analytics and how they took all that data, and their big thing they were selling everyone, we have 5,000 pieces of information from every Facebook user that we can then manipulate to get the results we want from different political agendas. And
wow.
I mean, yeah, it's quite fucked up shit.
Deepak Chopra would say that the reality we're living in is simulated because the real reality or the meta reality or beyond reality is what we really are, and us identifying with this virtual reality is the equivalent of getting an incredibly powerful computer and only using it for solitaire.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think there's lots of people say, you know, so things like people describing DMT experiences are a bit like that to me. It's the suggestion of this huge other that we are an expression of.
Yeah. And then maybe simulation theory is a sort of a modern rationalist semantic lingo version of that, you know, that they're basically saying that the simulation is the giant supercomputer. It is the field of consciousness, is what Deepak would call it. Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing as what the Hindus said. Yeah. So we're all creating our reality every second of the day based on the subtlety of the realms inside our heads.
So, Frankie, I wonder about this. So you're doing yoga right now, and it made me think that, are you taking a little second vision of your life and trying to be healthier, and are you changing tons of things?
Yeah, man.
What's going on, man? I kind of envision you as a real, like, burn the candle at both ends kind of person.
Yeah, I definitely have been. But I think also there's a point where professionally I'm getting to the point where I was so unfit, like I couldn't do what I wanted to do work-wise. Like you can't really go and do 100, 150, maybe 200 shows a year sometimes, and be like really unfit. You've got to, I mean, apart from anything else, you need your lung capacity and you need your circulation to work on stage, and there's a lot of different
because those shows have got to be tiring, man. Like doing that many shows, you really got to. When does you get to the point where you're like, I'm not sure how many more of these I've got in me, you know, this year or like this month?
I'm at that now, really. Like where I sort of the last couple of shows I've filmed, I've just warmed them up to the stage where they're really good, and then I film them. Like whereas most people are like shows they think you make money from, so you try and maybe warm up for 30 gigs and then you do the show for a year. Yeah. Whereas I try and just, you know, do all the hard work in the warm up and get it really good, and then don't tour it. Yeah. Which means you make less money, but like you're creating more stuff and it's more interesting.
Is this where the Zoom comedy gigs thing comes in? Because you're doing one of those later, aren't you?
Yeah. That's more for like telly stuff. So I'm doing this series New World Order. And it's just hard to gauge like sometimes you're just looking for people not to laugh. Like what you want is like, you want to know what's a really shit joke.
Oh yeah, right. I see what you're
or
saying.
something that people just don't understand or like completely passes them by. So they're sort of useful for that. But a lot of comedians now are gigging to cars. Like there's a scene where comedians are going out into fields and gigging to cars.
Oh, like a drive-in.
Yeah. But the
That's
people
a good
are still in
idea.
the car, yeah.
And if they're shit, can you run them over?
Well, apparently there's like, they can beat their horns and stuff like that.
Oh, so that's new kind of
the
heckling.
new
That
heckle.
is. It's like, come on, give me a chance, lads.
That's crazy. Wow. Because Zoom can be, the art of conversation on Zoom can be a draining one if it goes on. So I'd imagine the art of comedy, there's some
tough.
obstacles in the way, to getting an honest reading of your audience,
Yeah, I think you can't get an honest reading of the audience. So you've just got to accept that it's an approximation. Yeah, I mean, I'd really love to be doing gigs now, which I didn't think I'd ever say. Partly just to kill my audience.
Yeah.
Just the idea of, you've got so many ideas in the book and you don't know if they work.
Yeah. What are you using the current climate? Are you using like COVID jokes? Because I mean, we all know that you do controversial jokes and stuff, which we all love. But are you finding, how are they going down?
Oh yeah, it's going great. But I find almost people are too supportive. Aren't they?
Yeah,
because I think,
come on, fight me back.
Controversy has always been therapy, I think, and I think you're such a good exponent of that. That in these trying times, to find ways to laugh at it is incredibly therapeutic.
It is, massively.
Thing,
But they've taken the word pessimistic off my Wikipedia, which I felt thoroughly vindicated by. So
put it back.
You've lost your edge somehow, maybe, or that
was my thing, man.
I remember I went to one of your practice gigs last year, and one of your jokes was the irony of Red Nose Day is there's more of those red noses going to end up bobbing. I'm going to completely butcher your joke, bobbing around in the Mediterranean more so than the immigrants coming from Syria. There was something along those lines, and the audience went, "Oh!" to such an intense degree that you went, "Right, well, we won't be saying that one then." And you kind of flicked on. And
a
I
strong
thought,
negative reaction can be good.
I was going to say, do you get a kick out of that? Do you get a real kick when it's like, when you've hit a sort of a mass nerve?
Rock bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, sometimes it's like actually actively dangerous. I've had things where like years ago, some squaddies kind of like camped outside the venue pretty much after the gig. And it was just like I was in a cellar, and like the staff were telling them I'd gone and they were kind of like round the building searching for me and stuff. And you were really, and it was a joke that was like, shouldn't have been offensive to them. They just misunderstood it. And you're kind of like, do I want to be doing this forever? This is getting really fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
It seems to calm down now. People have sort of found some kind of balance with it again, I think.
Yeah, I think that people forget that with comedians as well, that there is that danger element. I mean, I remember hearing Russell Brand talking about a story of when someone took massive offence and like attacked him.
Really?
There is that element of, when you're trying to find these jokes that do kind of hit the nerves and are controversial, or you're playing along that line.
And the hypocrisy of it, that they'll sit and laugh for 90% of the gig, but when it comes on to a subject topic that they're sensitive about, you've crossed my line, sir! We will be dueling at dawn. But you might have crossed 100 other lines, and they're not that interested because it hasn't affected them personally.
Yeah.
There's also that thing of you can't really say too much about it as a comedian, because often, like, to be honest, sometimes when people are offended, it's because you've got the execution wrong. Because some of the things I've done that have offended people the most, I've actually thought, well, that's perfectly defensible. But I can't really, I've clearly not phrased it right, or I've not done it right if you've really gone off about it. But at the same time, you can't really apologise, because I think apology is not in the job. I mean, it's sort of a provocation. A lot of the jokes are provocations and are kind of supposed to be very surprising or shocking. And you can't, it's a bit like being like a tightrope walker or something, you know. If you fall off, there are consequences. And there are consequences for us when there's like scandals about jokes and stuff. But you can't look at a tightrope walker who's got like 2 broken legs and he's crawling away through the floor and apologise.
Yeah, and I think if people find it hard to separate you from your onstage persona, which literally, because it's your name in lights up there, and it's harder to distinguish Frankie Boyle from Frankie Boyle as opposed to actors who have a little bit more armour in that respect. Yeah.
Sure, I think also it's a slightly a class thing, because if you like Oxbridge and public school in England, you're expected to deal in a certain amount of ambiguity. And you're allowed to be quite arch and stuff like that, whereas it kind of like someone from a working class background and like and if you've got a regional accent or whatever, I think that they much more expect you to be a discursive person giving your opinions, you know, rather than playing with ideas or something, you know.
Sort of creative from the place of rebellion as opposed to just sort of wafting around like Wittgenstein. Talking about the problem with language. But that is the problem with language, and I think that's where a lot of joke scandals come from, because people just read the words, or they're divorced from the human delivery, you know, like on social media and stuff, and all they get is the sort of tip of the communication iceberg. And
I mean, they misunderstand context, because context sort of means, like a defensive context sort of means you had to be there. Like it was in among, that's a kind of harsh joke, but it was in among 9 less harsh jokes that led up to it, and then there was a thing at the end that explained it. But if you just see that little bit, you know, whereas people sort of think that context means, well, listen, if I give you a few sentences, you'll be able to understand. If you want, you kind of have to be at the shows.
Yeah. I sometimes think, Frankie, that meditation might be curing me of acting.
Oh, really?
Well,
how do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, just after, I suppose I had to be very, very careful with meditating on set and at work and stuff, because it centers you to you, you know. It brings you back to you. It brings you away from any interest in conflict, you know.
Oh, interesting.
And then you're going in, and ideally, if it's entertaining, you're playing a character in some sort of conflict who isn't you, who's dealing with this thing over here. And you've kind of just taken yourself away from it in such a way that it's probably not as good for my health, but it's best to remain sort of like, you know.
It's probably like a really good tool to, I think, in terms of like, especially those actors that really struggle to remove themselves from the role. That is a great way to
come out the other side. Absolutely.
Like if you felt that from going in, you're like, oh my god, I can't remember who Klaus is now.
Well, exactly.
You where I'm at.
Yeah, you feel like you've divorced yourself from your job.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I wonder about yoga. Have you seen changes in shades of your comedy since you've taken up yoga?
You know, I find that really fascinating about the acting thing. I hadn't even really thought about you looking for conflict. I think of that as a writer, you know, when you're watching stories. But we so rarely as viewers think of what the actor is actually aiming for or looking for or working with. You know, such a kind of there's so much art to it that I think we as viewers don't think about.
Yeah, I think it's hard to think about the internal machinations of other people. Just you know, I suppose that sort of profound empathy. And I suppose on one level, you kind of don't want the audience to be... Well, do you know what? I watched Leaving Las Vegas last night because I'd never seen it before. And from moment one, you can see what's going on, or at least you have a strong internal sense of what's going on inside this rampant alcoholic's mind and body. That he's so brilliantly clear with his intention. He wears his desperation so on the surface that he's just so exposed. I think that's probably what good acting is, that there's not much of a separation between what's going on the outside and the inside.
Yeah, because there's different ways to do it, isn't it? That's the thing. So many actors have different techniques to achieve it, and there's not just one good way.
Yeah.
Because there's always this thing of like the outside in. You take it from like all the things that I can see and I bring that to me. Or is it something that I've experienced enough to come from the inside out and bring it out? So, and I like to kind of be free to do either. Because there's some things that I've not experienced. Like I remember in season 1 when Luther went on this drug bender, right? And I've never taken any drugs. So I went, Rob, what's it like?
Don't know what you mean, Tom.
But like, there's certain actors that would feel that they have to go on a bender and take 15 ecstasy pills to know exactly what that feels like. But I didn't want to actually put myself through that. But I want to know everything about what it feels like.
I think as well, you get that a lot in young men who really deify actors if they lose loads of weight, or if they put on loads of weight, or if they do something kind of mutilating to represent the internal change, when in fact it's distracting from the internal change if you've put that much energy into that aspect of your performance. I think sometimes that misses the point. But because it's so opaque or abstract, that kind of internal journey, that young, sort of eager, usually male actors really sort of get on board with the idea of, no, that's acting if you're dieting. That's acting, and because it's a tangible change. It's something that you can kind of hold on to.
Yeah, like the Joker. Joaquin Phoenix did that. Role there. And
the
Mechanic or that as well.
Yeah.
There are things that the physical changes sometimes do make you feel a certain way.
Yeah, that's true.
Like actually, like for instance, Luther on Umbrella Academy, like when I put that suit on, I put this giant suit on, Frankie, and Luther as a character is supposed to feel like an awkward human. Like he's supposed to feel very small inside, but he's a massive man. But he's a sensitive guy. But when I put that suit on, it's so uncomfortable and big. It immediately makes me feel like uncomfortable.
Sort of a kind of a freakish.
So that physical change. I mean, yes, I'm putting a suit on, but it makes you feel something different.
Is there that, we're saying about Frankie Boyle on the stage, it's also Frankie Boyle living his life. Is there an element of putting the suit on? Is there a sort of a transformation from Frankie to persona
totally,
Frankie?
Hugely. And it's like, I think sometimes because your stage character is quite close to you and it has your name and your face and everything.
Yeah.
But like, it's obvious to me even that I don't particularly speak in that voice. I have a much deeper voice on stage, probably in that sort of fear voice you do when people are like near your car or something, And I just think that it seems obvious to me. I sometimes wonder if this is a thing about being an addict, because like I was an alcoholic and an addict for like a lot of my 20s, and there's a real paradox of addiction, which is you imagine that the trauma your addiction comes from, most of it comes from some kind of trauma, is that you imagine that you couldn't say it to anyone. So that's most people's starting point of like, I can't go to a meeting because I couldn't ever tell anybody this, right? Whereas in fact, usually at meetings, they've heard it. I mean, they've almost certainly heard your thing. But at the same time, you think, I can't tell anyone this, but it must be obvious to an outside observer where it comes from, So you're in this kind of strange place where you're kind of like, well, I imagine people know I'm like this because of this.
Yeah.
Because usually a trauma or PTSD or something people are working through. And that creates a lot of trouble for addicts, I think. I think it's analogous to like a kind of stage character.
Yeah. Are there addicts out there, do you think, Frankie, who don't know what their thing is? Do you know what I mean? Like they're just on a course and they're like, let's get smashed. Sure.
I mean, I think there's definitely addicts who underestimate I think they know what it is usually, but sometimes they underplay it.
Yeah.
Because it's not a huge, bereavement or something terrible that they feel justifies their addiction.
Frankie, when you talk about your addiction, and I know you said you worked in a mental hospital as maybe one of your early jobs, what made you start your brand of comedy? Was it because you just were creating a character and being really provocative with what you wanted to do, or was it a conscious choice? Did you really want to make social commentary, or
I mean, was there?
No, man, it was just total desperation because I was like drinking really heavily. Like,
so what, it was like an outlet? It was
yeah. And I was really drunk on stage, and I was really drunk when I wrote it. And like it was, I was doing teacher training, but I couldn't have possibly had a job.
Right.
Like I was far too far out to have done that. So this was one of the few jobs you could do drunk.
Oh,
I've known actors that get away with doing acting as well, doing that actually.
Yeah. Well, that's it's since acting was around. I think, since time immemorial, they've been.
Has been a point in your career where you've, because obviously I actually did a part of my dissertation at college, at drama school, was about the crossover between stand-up comedy and acting, because there's such a similarity in that you going on stage, performing, you're putting on a persona of a version of you. And there's a lot of obviously stand-up comedians that cross over into film and television. Is that a thing that's ever been of interest to you?
Not really. I've never really thought about it. I love watching actors. I used to love watching actors do stand-up and the different things they could bring to it. You'd be like, wow, they're getting a laugh with their eyes. Slaving over some punchline, and they've just thought to look up at that bit or whatever. I think you can really learn from watching actors do like that kind of performance to an audience.
Yeah. Well, that's why Lee Evans has always interested me as a stand-up, because it's such a performance,
Yeah.
Very physical, and I also find it very funny.
And you enjoy dripping.
I enjoy a lot of dripping. Yeah,
extra
so much
bonus
dripping in a Lee. I mean, me and Lee Evans are just there dripping away together.
He's dripping before the show begins.
Yeah, man, he comes on just drenched, doesn't he? Wow, drenched. He's got
the amount of stress in that man's body before.
Well, he's getting rid of a lot of toxins every night, isn't he? Jesus.
Oh, so he's coming on, and it's never just an act. That's the thing with comedy as well. It's never entirely an act. So he has tremendous stage fright, and he gave up, I think, in the end. Wow. But like, I've seen footage of him backstage where he looks really super nervous, and then he comes on, and part of his act is, "I'm nervous," and, So there's always a grain of truth in it.
Do you think there's that breed of comedian who go towards the light of their fear? That's why they're comedians.
Yeah, like Sarah Pascoe, the comedian, she's got a thing in her book about comedians tend to have like quite big tummies, even thin ones, and it's because we get this huge insulin jag through fighting the fight or flight response.
Yeah, cortisone.
So, you get this, especially when you start to go out in like 2,000 seaters and stuff on a Friday night. There's a huge roar, and it's just like you really want to run away, and you've got to just stand there and like for 75 minutes or whatever.
Does that fluctuate, throughout your career, the fight-flight reaction or the anticipation of going on stage? Has that gone up and down throughout your career? Do you know what I mean?
Down massively. Maybe you're just controlling it to some extent.
Yeah.
But I want to give the fight or flight feeling to them. I want them to feel it.
I think you do though as an audience member when you go to watch stand-up. Like I feel kind of like, please don't die on me on stage. You know what I mean? It's like, please be funny. There's that hope that they are as funny as you see them on TV or what you've heard about them, and
because I think as well when you can get the fight reaction as the audience members when you go to see really, really beginner comedy. I used to live in Los Angeles.
Oh my God, yeah.
My mate who I lived
store.
with, he used to go to the comedy store and do little gigs. We used to go to Laugh Factory and stuff and watch these folks who may not necessarily be cut out for it or may not have gotten to the point where they're good yet. And it is a Brechtian nightmare as an audience member.
It's horrible.
I'm aware I'm in a theatre. I'm aware that this is not...
Please be funny.
Yeah. And... So it's interesting at the other end of the scale, trying to create that feeling in people. Like I suppose you, Stuart Lee, exponents of this, geniuses of this, where you're making people feel they're laughing, but they're also very much on the edge of their seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if it is a bit like a high wire act, people like that.
Yeah.
People like they get some sense of when you're pushing things out a bit.
Yeah.
And enjoy it,
My fight or flight thing has definitely gone up and down. It's definitely fluctuated, and it's also, I think, to do with the context. I had to give a speech. I was at the start. It was in February. It was the start of an Extinction Rebellion march.
Oh yeah.
It started near Russell Square and then went down like Oxford Street, down Regent Street, down Trafalgar Square, and up to Westminster. And at the start of it, there was me, but there was also like loads and loads of environmentalists and people who, like doctors and all sorts of like proper clever clogs. And I was shitting a brick. And then later on that night, there was an event, which was great fun. You were there.
Yeah.
That brilliant event. And I had to do again a little kind of a part of a closing speech. But I think the difference was because it was me up there and I was kind of riffing. I just had these very, very intense visions of everybody just looking at me like crickets. Do you know what I mean? Kind of going...
Who's that guy?
We were just partying, having a laugh, talking to each other, and now someone's shoved you up on stage, and you're saying some bullshit, and it's not particularly funny.
Well, I find that because people say to me, if you like ever have to do a speech at a wedding or something,
terrifying.
they're like, "You're used to this, aren't you? You're an actor, you're used to this." I'm like, "No, I'm just me up there. I have a script, I have a character to hide behind. I hate doing public speaking. It's not for me."
Yeah, and I admire people who are good at that. My cousin Gareth got married years ago, and he stood up as the reception bit and was chatting away for 15, 20 minutes. Not a bother on him, and I was like, "Fuck!" Like, and he's just one of those people who's kind of fundamentally confident in his skin. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think I went into acting because I probably wasn't fundamentally confident in my skin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I suppose acting in comedy, there's probably a lot of similarities to be drawn there.
I should have put that in my dissertation.
Mr. Trick. What did you get? Did you get graded for that?
Yeah, you got graded, yeah.
What did you get?
For the actual dissertation, I think a 2-1. Yeah.
Could have been a 1-1.
Could have been a 1.
Could have been a 1-1.
I missed that point now, that's what it was. That would have got me the first, it would have tipped me over the edge.
I think in comedy, sometimes you do stuff and you think it's bad, or you don't enjoy it, or it's not great, but the audience don't know. I mean, I think the difference between what we think is great and what the audience might think is bad is probably like a fair chunk. I think it'd have to go really badly for them to notice it was bad. And you just have to not say anything through it, and it's, no one's ever going to know.
Yeah.
Like a V Festival one time, and I really shouldn't have done it. You do a gig during the day in a tent, and it's all these people that are there to see bands and stuff, but they're like really young. They're like 21 or whatever. And there's screens and all that kind of stuff, but they're just kind of fundamentally not there for comedy kind of thing. And it's 2 p.m. So I was doing that, and they were like, "Oh, you should do this. Eddie Izzard did it last year. Eddie Izzard's was there." And I was like, "Okay, I'll come and do it." And I guess if he's done it, and then afterwards, obviously they went to me, "Oh, Eddie Izzard fucking hated this." Terrible time, right? But I did, and there's so little air in the room that they're laughing, but it's just like you're straight into the next sentence on the almost on the laugh. Yeah. You're straight into the next thing all the time. You've only got to do like 25 minutes or something. I get into the last 6 or 7 minutes. I know that there's something crawling around on my face, right? There's not enough energy in this room that I could stop to deal with it, or like literally, if you took a second out of this, the whole souffle might just collapse, right? So I try to sort of look off to a corner, and as I look over at this corner, there's a giant screen, and I can see that there's this horrible kind of horsefly just crawling around like that. And I try to sell these last kind of 5 jokes with this thing happening and go, "Thanks a lot, have a great festival." And and those people will never know that it was hard. They're like, "Yeah, people laughed, it was fine."
Yeah. Hey, I wonder with your brand of humor, because it is so harsh criticism of the world and everything that's going on, is there an agenda that you want people, because I feel like your commentary being very liberal kind of speaks to my liberal dark side, or is it you just want to laugh, you don't care? Is there something you would hope that people get out of what you do? Yeah, do you want
people to leave with a deeper thought?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's all in there. But sometimes they don't really look for that, or they think it's about something else, or they hear your accent, or whatever it is, you know. So you can't dictate what everyone's going to take from it.
And that's a rule for life, I think,
Yeah.
isn't it? That we can walk around all day under the illusion of what other people are thinking about this situation, or rehearsing conversations in the future, like this one that I've done, and get yourself in a real mental pickle, you know, for no reason at all, other than the old thinky hamsters are just out of control slightly. So I suppose that, you know, that was something I kind of had to learn being on stage as well. That silence is golden, and it's also it's not really anything, you know. It just is, and as long as you're completely committed to the moment, you know, everything will be fine. But I started out on stage very, very nervous. I think because of an expectation, because I thought, oh, there's this a rapturous reaction going on in the form of a laugh, and now tomorrow night when we do it, it just doesn't build up in the same way, and yet, and then you'd just be suddenly on a kind of a cumulative, catastrophic mode of thinking where you're going, well, oh God, we didn't get that laugh, and it's so consistent when we get that laugh, and now the show doesn't exist, you know. And I've had to learn over the years, and that's actually helped me in life massively, because learning it on stage under the, you know, the intense gaze of 1,000 people is the best possible way to learn it, I think, because it's like a baptism by fire. And it's a great thing to apply to life, you know.
Well, I think we tend towards an illusion of control as performers, because it would be easier for us if we were always in control. So we go, well, that laugh didn't work there. That must be me, because I am in control. Whereas actually it could be that it was raining that night and people had to queue outside, or, you know, that they had a bad day or whatever. It's not you know.
Yeah, I do find that when I'm in certain audiences, or when I've, you know, done plays on stage, and there's just as soon as you get on, or as soon as the show starts, there is an energy in the audience that seems to be contagious. Like, you've either got an audience that is really interactive and really wants to laugh, or you have one that is just like a bit dead. It's a matinee performance. You know? It's just not
true.
there.
It's like you're just banging your head against a cold face. I think maybe your work in a psychiatric institution, Frankie, may have informed your comedy a little bit.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet.
But I remember that gig I went to see you at. You had a joke about air shows in the future. Do you remember? And I wrote a kind of a sort of a silly creative piece and emailed it to you after, inspired by this joke, which I'm going to butcher again. But it was like air shows in the future will be these people who will be in these levitating sex orbs, and they'll be able to watch man-made disasters from the future. And so
I think the idea is that time travelers of the future will read about disasters, and certain perverts among them will choose to go back to times of great disaster to wank over them, and they'll appear levitating in these kind of like energy balls, and so you know that you're about to be in a disaster, because all these like kind of time travelers turn up in awe,
all in their orbs like this. You're like, oh no, something terrible is about to happen.
There's always stuff like that in the shows, but it's a really hard sell to a live crowd. That's why I was thinking about AI. Actually, was like an idea like that. Is like what we'll our appeal to AI is what things we can do that it can't do.
Yeah. Which is most, you know, it's everything in terms of, you know, Deepak would say all of the human traits that come from the field of consciousness are, you know, things you'd call emotional intelligence, ambition, compassion. You know, these are traits that shape what we then do. You know, our actions are underpinned by these traits that are sort of assigned to us from a sort of a field of, you know, fundamental reality. And that's what I think that's the distinction with AI, that we can create these things, and we can be their god and stuff, but ultimately we're not creating them in our own image, because how can you teach a supercomputer lateral. Well, you can probably teach it lateral thinking. We teach it, things that shape our action. Do you know what I mean? They can do things, but what's shaping their actions? Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, Noam Chomsky's got an interesting quote. Someone said, "Will AI be able to think?" And he said, "Can a submarine swim?" So it's like it's sort of irrelevant if you think of it as thinking, or you would define it as thinking. It will get the same sort of job done. So there's some AI philosophers, I forget, there's a really famous one, said our best hope is that it keeps us as pets, that we're improving to it in some way. But I sort of think it won't have a psychedelic element. It won't be able to trip. And our best future might be as like kind of tripping agents for AI. Like goggles that it wears through some psychedelic reality.
So that we're the AI's portal into a psychedelic trip.
Yeah.
So someone needs to give you access to a really powerful computer with AI, artificial intelligence, and you need to see if you can make it laugh. That's going to be the trick.
That'd be good.
Can you actually be a stand-up comedian to artificial intelligence?
Yeah. And that's you made me lose my thought. But it's the same way like Deepak Chopra says that the brain, does it create consciousness? And he says it's kind of the equivalent of adding enough cards to the playing deck that the deck eventually starts playing poker. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, that makes it, because it's this organic spongy thing in our heads that has very millions of cells which are signaled by something. And
he does a bit of yoga, and I don't want to diss, but from the photos, he doesn't look to be great at it.
We'll tell him that.
Let's start a yoga feud between Frankie Boyle and Deepak Chopra.
The Glaswegian versus the Indian Joanne.
Oh dear!
Amazing. So, guys, we're kind of getting up towards the end of this lovely conversation.
Really nice to talk to you guys.
Yeah, and you, Frankie.
Lovely
Thanks for coming on. It's been great.
Yes, and we will badger you in the future, I hope.
Yeah, anytime.
A topic as saucy as simulation theory kind of springs us into conversation.
Surely we can have a field trip where we can go to some big corporate something and actually see if anyone has anything truly dangerous in technologically speaking.
The Large Hadron Collider. The Large Hadron Collider is...
Yeah, I'm very frightened of the Hadron Collider.
Yes, and it's...
What is this? I don't know what the Hadron Collider is.
A giant circular tunnel that exists across the borders of France and Switzerland. It's 200 miles, I think, in circumference. And they've been using it to... basically clash subatomic particles together at high speeds in order to...
Wait, why are you afraid of this?
Well, let me tell you, because the Astronomer Royal, no less, he said that one of the dangers with it is that if they get it wrong, some of these particles could crush the Earth into an object about the size of a football pitch. One of the problems with it is it might create this thing called oidlets, which are these tiny, tiny, unseeable black holes. But if it was creating those, they would drop straight to the centre of the Earth because of their incredible sort of density. And the first we would know about that would be the Earth would turn into a quasar.
Laser tag.
Yeah, it frightens me. Also, they found a weasel. Do you know about this? So it's supposed to be this completely impenetrable system. It's obviously a scientific study. They found a weasel in there, and they were like, "How did that fucking get in there?" And they couldn't find out. And I wonder if it's some sort of ambassador
from another dimension.
Another dimension where this happened before,
materialized out of subatomic particles. How did the weasel get in there? Surely they found any little holes, as in real holes, soil holes,
burrows.
Yeah,
that would be comforting, but no. Also, did you see their opening ceremony
of the Large Hadron Collider?
They had an opening ceremony for the Large Hadron Collider, led by a demon with goat legs and a giant kind of eye that these figures got sucked into, and it was the most Illuminati death cult thing
I'm seeing the next Indiana Jones movie.
Do you know, I did see, you're jogging my memory, because I did see a documentary on the LHC, and all the kind of hubris in all of the scientists was it's humming, in the sense that they were all like, basically there was a delay on starting it. They were like, oh, we're going to delay the launch, the switching on of the LHC. And they were like, why? It's like, and then there was pressure from the media, and there was pressure from the financiers and everything else. And they were like, it's like they're rushing Einstein into E equals MC squared. You know, there was such a sense of we are the scientific frontier, you know.
Yeah.
And that's so strange that they got.
So can we do this as a family outing? You get your kids, we'll get our kids, we'll all go visit the Collider en masse.
Yeah.
Have a little tour.
Perhaps it's drawing us there. Perhaps it's drawing us there because it knows the quasar moment is imminent, and we'll just.
Here, what do you think, though? 'Cause I remember in your comedy you said that this could solve some sort of quantum problem, and then reality just essentially just falls away, and then the big sign comes up saying level 2, right? But haven't we already arrived at that point, Frankie? I mean, you know, Hinduism and a lot of, like, you know, Taoism and stuff, they all decree that this is an illusion. And I think, like with simulation theory proponents believe that if we prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is a simulation, that they could switch us off. But like, haven't we, like, isn't that point already, haven't we got past that point already? Because there's been thousands of years of esoteric thinking that basically concludes that it's certain that this is some sort of simulation.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a section in the new show about Baudrillard, Jean Baudrillard, the philosopher, and I'd never really understood him that well until we started researching it for this. But his thing, you know, he's famous for writing about hyper-reality, so he talks about the Iraq War never happened. That's one of his most famous essays. And he says, you know, it's all, everything now happens through image and symbol, and it's kind of taken over the real, and it's become hyper-real, and we can't find any reality. But it turns out that he starts off from the position of saying, we created reality. We created reality through language and thought because we couldn't handle what we initially encountered. Yeah. And I found this a really difficult idea at first, but he said, you know, we came up with the word orange because the actuality of orange was too much for us, you know. So we came up with words and symbols that we could exchange, that would create a manageable to be conscious in, because we're still the only thing that's conscious. Yeah. And we've got to deal with this.
Yeah, we're the only creature that has this sort of self-awareness layer. And it's so interesting, like the way Mr. Chopra, who I've just been reading one of his books, so it's all really fresh in my head, but he talks about how the ego tool, you know, it's almost like he didn't call it this, but an internal sense which throughout our evolution has to some degree metastasized, you know, and it is the software, if you will, which sort of allows us to negotiate with reality. It's almost like the kind of reality broker that we have inside of our heads that facilitates our understanding of reality through symbol and image, and then I suppose language is the other one.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because Deepak, Dr. D as I call him, he's on the kind of forefront of where science and spirituality are kind of meeting, and they're all saying the same thing, you know, that we are essentially an infinite field of consciousness that is expressing itself temporarily through humans, dogs, potato waffles, Sir Francis Boyle,
and your comedy.
Yeah, exactly.
You take
this is pretty much how I got into comedy, though, because I got into Bill Hicks, and that was his thing of we're all one consciousness expressing itself subjectively.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's the Hindus think that the world, the universe isn't a thing, it's a play, you know, it's an act, and there's a stage and we're on it. But you can, through meditation, go backstage.
You go to the green room.
Go to the green room and sort of see what we are without the mask or the makeup. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Good
Anywho.
stuff.
Well, thank you very much, Frankie.
Thanks
I don't know what this was, but it was great.
A serious non sequitur conversation.
Indeed.
That's what I like.
Yes. Take care.
Guys,
Take care.
Thanks, Frankie.
Break
Cheers.
the
Have a
gig
good one,
later
bud.
on.
Take care.
Oh, what's a New World? Oh, he's gone. Fuck. Frankie Boyle's New World Order, which I believe is on Channel 4 or BBC 2. One of the things.
Show notes will have it in there.
New
Don't
World
Google
Order.
is your friend.
Google it.
Google is your
Or
friend.
Ecosia it. That's a new one.
A new search engine.
Ecosia it, because when you accumulate searches on ecosia.org,
They give you money?
the revenue generated from mass searches plants trees.
No.
Yeah, they use all their profits. Or I don't know if they use all their profits.
I'm gonna put
Ecosia.
that-
ECOSIA. There's also an ocean one that the revenue generated from the search engine, I think it's called Ocean Hero. Ocean 11. And then there was Ocean's 12, which was trying to destroy the...
Ecosia.org.
That's the one. Yeah.
There you go.
And
it
look,
says,
it says 105 million trees planted.
That's how many trees have been planted so far. There you go.
Because
So
truly
you
Google
can-
does not need
It's
your
really
money.
going up as well. It's, I mean, they've got
Yeah.
some serious
And
headway
now
here.
anything I search, to be honest, like it's a I'll be honest with you, it's a search engine. It's not as good as Google, right? But it can
If you're
do.
looking for Birkenstocks,
But you know,
that's
they're
the
new.
place.
They're in their infancy.
If you're buying something, do it through Ecosia. So go to Ecosia, to Amazon, or to wherever else, and then they get a piece of the revenue. And then
That's
that goes
good.
into the ground, plants a tree, for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
There's a bit of Earthlocker knowledge for you.
Yeah.
That's what we do it for.
be a little subjective.
Well
that was
played.
that was very interesting.
That was,
That was
wasn't
good.
it?
And it was really nice. It was really refreshing to... Because you've known him for a while, haven't you, Frankie?
About a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was
yeah.
the first time I've actually seen him really outside of the on-stage Frankie.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's always great. I love meeting comedians when you get to
Yeah.
see what they're really like. And
Yeah.
again, it's like they're always such like gentle souls and
Yeah, they are something other than their stage
Yeah,
persona, which
yeah.
I think even actors can be duped by the fact
Totally.
that their name is their show name.
Charlie from Casualty.
Well, is he a comedian?
No, but he's only known as Charlie from Casualty. I'd love to know. He's probably just like his character in the show.
Let's get Charlie from Casualty on.
I'd love to get Charlie.
Is that
from
a
Casualty.
UK television?
Oh yeah, so Casualty is a UK hospital show. It's a bit like
Which you were on, weren't you?
it was my very first job. I played Chewie Mullen, as in like Chewbacca, who was a debt collector, and he had to go and collect a car from his ex-teacher, who had a gambling problem.
Of course.
I was gutted. I didn't have a scene with Charlie.
And did you end up in Casualty for some
I did.
reason?
No, she did. I ran over her foot.
Oh,
Wow.
I took her flowers. Yeah, that was my very first job.
that's amazing.
Like 3 months out of drama school, I got that. Yeah.
We should get Charlie from Casualty on, see if he remembers you.
I don't know if he would. I'm not sure if he was ever on set. I was gutted. I always
It's so
wanted to be
funny
Charlie.
how like Ireland, England are like one of my first jobs was a thing called the clinic.
Yeah. There you go, same thing.
Playing a diabetic surfer.
Yeah, there you go.
Needed to figure out how to administer his insulin with time zone changes and all that stuff, and he's like terrified of needles.
And he was an
Oh,
Ireland.
God. Yeah, it's always one of those. Terrified
Yeah.
of needles.
yeah. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
I did. There was another one because I'm from the Midlands in the UK, and there's the Midlands soap that you do if you're from the Midlands. It's called Doctors.
Oh,
So it's
really? Is
another
that
one.
based in the Midlands?
Yeah. In fact, my wife was Laura was semi-reg on that for a bit. She's very funny in it. She's
nice.
actually a really funny show.
She's a very funny human.
She is, yeah. She's got balls as well, man.
Really?
Oh man, like she's.
How did that
feisty.
work in the birthing process? They
Tricky.
must have
Carefully.
gotten in the way.
Very carefully.
Now, taking a lolly stick, put the balls to one side. There we go.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But Mr. Boyle. I mean, I think his comedy is so sharp and so funny,
Oh
and
my
so
God, yeah.
from a place of wow, I'm on an intellectual roller coaster here.
I quite like
think-
people to who've just watched him on this.
Yeah.
Going. People who don't know him in America or something,
Yeah.
go and be like, "Oh my God, he's."
Go and watch his special. If I could reach out through my television and strangle you, I would. That's the name of
That's
one
the
of his
whole
comedy
name.
specials.
Oh
yeah.
my God.
Yeah. Or if I could reach out through the television and punch you in the face, it's one of them.
That was a sequel.
I can't envision his style of comedy transferring over to the States.
But that would be interesting.
He's no James Gordon or
incredibly dry.
Certainly not mainstream. No. Anthony Jeselnik is a really, really, really good American comedian who pushes the boat very, very far out in terms of dead baby jokes. In terms of, what was that other one? He goes, you know, I've got depressive suicide runs in my family, but it skips a generation. So if I'm lucky, my kids will get it.
Yep, dark.
that kind of realm.
But you know what? That's the thing. That's an interesting thing, that, because immediately, like, I didn't even have to think about it. For whatever reason, I just found that funny.
Yeah.
And I've got kids, and I would never. But so you don't associate it to yourself. It's just in context of the way he said that.
Yeah.
I think that's hilarious.
It kind of points to our yin yang nature, you know.
Yeah.
I think the kind of shadow. I mean, I can't profess to know much about the teachings of Carl Jung, but he would sort of point to there being a shadow thought for every thought. Mm-hmm. You know, Taoism describes it as when beauty is perceived, ugliness is created. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's always got to be an opposite. Because you're both actors. Have you ever tried? Either you actually tried your hands at stand-up?
It would scare me to death.
Yeah.
I would have to create a character.
Yeah.
In order to do it.
I would have to create it and then go, that's what I can be behind.
That's the whole key to it. As long as you can be that guy who now all this stuff is funny from the perspective of that guy.
Yeah.
And that's the same with Jeselnik, actually. His on-stage persona is very kind of shark-like and very like, oh, I'm wicked.
Yeah.
But off thing, he was on Joe Rogan and stuff, but off stage, he's very kind of, you know, cash, normal, sweet, sort of. But he and I think Frankie is comparable. Frankie's found this sort of steamroller persona,
which is different to like the stand-ups like Dave Chappelle. Like Dave Chappelle's, of what I've heard and seen, he can like just turn up somewhere, and just start talking away and be funny. Yeah, like it's not even.
Yeah, he'll show up to the Comedy Store and do like a 2-hour gig, thoughts and stuff. Yeah. And it's that thing. I think the mystery of comedy is a bit like magic. Because you go, wait, how did you turn that information into a joke? You know, that's a tricky thing to do. It's like song lyrics. You know, it's not something that all of our brains can do.
I mean, I found it interesting that he was saying that he doesn't like to tour his material so much. He wants to perfect it, record it, and then get on to the next bit. Yeah. Where some comedians, Eddie Izzard, had a thing where somebody tried to sue him for doing the same jokes in shows that they'd seen. That was a couple of years ago, wasn't it? I think
that's
that was
so silly.
You know, like they don't get it that these comedian things are actually
rehearsed. Like,
these are actually written down.
Suing Cirque du Soleil for an acrobatics act that you saw.
Yeah. You did the same flip last time.
But Frankie was saying when a joke doesn't go over well, he just realized, I just need to tweak my delivery. Something was wrong with my delivery, nothing wrong with the joke. You know? I can make it work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's trusting in your own ability to know whether something's funny or not, I guess. Because, I mean, how many times you do it and they don't laugh and you go, I think I should scrap it. Or, no, it is funny. Yeah. I just got to back myself with a delivery that I know I've got to... It's in there somewhere.
That's the journey of the artist. Yeah. You know, because it is a tricky thing.
Well, it's also the same as when we're acting. If a joke lands, if you know you've hit it on a take, or you go, actually, no, I didn't. The timing wasn't right on that one.
Joke and everything, I think. You know?
Yeah, totally.
And that's what's so great about Cage's performance last night, because I was trying to, in Leaving Las Vegas, check out that movie if you haven't seen it. For
only if you want to be really depressed for 24 hours.
It's a same movie. Great performance though.
I was trying to kind of back engineer his performance, and the decisions he makes are just like, wow, you know, really, really ambitious. It made me go, fuck, I've got to try and up my game here in terms of like, you know, from one scene to the next. It might but not be time circumstantial. I mean, you know, there might have been a time jump or whatever, but he'll do one scene, like, because he's an alcoholic in the film, so he might do one scene where he's written down, it's a romantic scene between a man and a woman, and they're kind of getting to know each other and stuff, but he's literally like, most of his scenes that are romantic are him kind of on his back and sort of just letting her love him, you know, just letting her just shower this kind of Madonna love onto this broken man, and he's just completely kind of at the surrender of this sort of strangulating love. Not strangulating, but it kind of develops and becomes strangulating, Then he has to try to find a way out of it. But it's just some of the decisions he makes are so intense. And of course, as you're watching it, it all just streams together beautifully. You know.
I'm sorry, the spoiler alert. The film ends very happy. They get married. They live happily ever after.
Yeah.
Definitely watch it. It's a feel good, family friendly kind of entertainment.
I think we sold it as that.
Look at that. Loved and hated that film.
Yeah. It's intense.
All right, guys. Well, this is a fun little conversation on the Locker of Earth.
Thank you for
Earth Locker. Being part of this. Like,
subscribe,
tell a friend,
and plant a few trees if you're feeling that way inclined.
Check it on use a different browser.
Ecosia.org.
Ecosia.org, exactly.
And they're not even a sponsor of the podcast.
Yeah,
so just free.
But Ecosia, if you do want to give us money in the future, we will accept.
We will say your name again.
Yes. Well, should we jingle ourselves out, lads?
Yes.
We should get some sock puppets as well.
We should do like a whole episode
just doing some socks because your feet obviously need some socks.
Oh yeah.
Come on.
I'm gonna grow hooves eventually.
Get the cobblestone on that.
God, let's hope that doesn't make it into the jingle.
That's over.
It made it, yeah.